Now, moving on, we want to talk about something else television-related, Steve. This past Friday could have possibly been the beginning of the end of television as we know it, or at least that's what Netflix would like us to believe. Netflix is taking a huge chance on premium original content to secure its customer base, ensure its survival, and become the next HBO. Reed Hastings, the co-founder, has a vision for TV that ought to scare studio heads as much as Netflix's first business, direct-by-mail DVDs, scared Blockbuster, but I hope it turns out a bit better this time for them. The actual show we're talking about, House of Cards, a remake of a popular British drama from the 1990s set in present-day Washington, D.C., the story of Frank Underwood trying to become the Secretary of State but getting passed on. Steve, this is getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, I mean, and it's getting a lot of attention, not even so much for the show, but the way it's being distributed. I mean, it's totally upending the establishment, both in terms of broadcast television and in terms of cable. If anything, it probably competes with HBO or Showtime shows more than the four major networks. But I think what's interesting about it beyond the show, and I've heard it's a good show. I've seen the pilot, and I enjoyed it. I did not watch it on Netflix, which is something else to bring up.
Yeah.
But I think it's the economics behind the show. Now, Netflix spent $100 million to produce two 13-episode seasons. So there's already 2 seasons in the works.
Yeah.
Now, just to go over the economics a bit. Now, it's $7.99 a month to subscribe to Netflix, okay? Now, to break even on $100 million over those 2 years, you need 500,000 people to sign up for that subscription, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, Netflix is on record saying that they want 5 of these shows every year. So that means $500 million. That means 2.6 million subscribers, okay? Now, that only is a 10% growth from where their subscriber base is now, which is 33 million, sorry.
So it sounds conceivable.
Right. It's not completely unreasonable to suggest that another 10% would be added over those 2 years, and that's without including the addition of this premium content.
Yeah.
So if you look at the pure economics of it for Netflix, it's not completely, out of the question for this to work, and for it to be profitable for Netflix. Mm-hmm. Obviously what they're going for is for Netflix to be a destination for original programming, not just, basically a DVD streaming service, and this is their first foray into that. Now, obviously, they've been successful because House of Cards has gained a lot of press for the way in which it's being distributed, but also for it being a good show. Kevin Spacey is the lead, Academy Award-winning actor.
Huge.
That's probably Academy Award. Yeah, that's probably where some of the $100 million is coming from.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, for the television industry, I would think they would be worried about that, and especially HBO and Showtime, because that's the model they're going after.
Ted Sarandos, the COO of Netflix, said the goal is to become HBO faster than HBO can become us. Mm-hmm. So they're clearly trying to become part of the same conversation. Mm-hmm. And to continue our conversation, we'd like to bring on our guest this week, Richard Lawler, the HD editor of Engadget.com. Richard, how are you?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. This is really a fascinating conversation. First of all, Netflix goes all in with original programming, invests $100 million with this House of Cards show. Will this pay off for Netflix, do you think?
That's an interesting question. They're doing a couple things that other TV networks or TV providers either can't do or won't do, because they're providing this in many countries and they're providing the entire series all at once. And it's kind of a new way to do TV. In their last earnings note, they called it a revolution in online video, or really the future of online video, and it could be. I don't know if viewers are going to necessarily all go to this binge viewing that Netflix wants to encourage, where they put all of the episodes online and let you pick when you want to watch it. Mm-hmm. It's a lot different than what we're used to.
Now, do you think this new model will change the actual content? Because unlike broadcast networks, they don't have to worry about censorship restriction, length of time, and even for premium cable, they don't have to worry about time slots. So do you think this will allow for a more liberal creative process, or are they going to stick to what people know?
I don't think the creative process is necessarily going to change a lot, even with the kind of stuck time slots. And as you mentioned, for premium cable, they don't have to worry about content for shows on HBO or Showtime or something like that. For Netflix, one thing that's different for them is because they know that you may just sit down and watch all the episodes. You've gotten used to seeing recaps at the beginning of an episode when you're watching TV. They don't do that because they figure you just watched the last episode 5 minutes ago. And that's the way a lot of people are doing it right now. Also, that's the way that a lot of people watch TV shows on Netflix already when they're catching up with old shows. I'm sure you probably had friends tell you that they've caught up with Breaking Bad or The Walking Dead or some other popular show on Netflix and then started watching it on TV.
Well, along that same vein, with Netflix releasing all 13 episodes at once, while that is great for fans, as we've mentioned, who want to marathon these types of shows, do you think it's kind of counterintuitive in building anticipation and buzz and social media engagement around the actual show?
That's really the $1 million question or the $100 million question in the case of Netflix, if this is a good strategy. But I think the evidence in favor is because if you look at the viewing behaviors that people have had of other shows they've watched on Netflix, and I think this is what Netflix is looking at when they decided to do it this way. People have watched Mad Men, they've watched Breaking Bad, they've watched a number of shows, and they had no problem catching up with several years of programming, even though, for example, somebody else, maybe their office mate has already seen it. It still works.
Now, we're moving closer and closer to an on-demand television's lifestyle, I believe, and obviously this Netflix model is probably the closest to that. Do you think Netflix and this model is a threat to the established television distribution, or is it too soon to make those sorts of judgments yet?
I think it isn't yet, because there's still a lot of content on cable TV. If you're looking at this and you're saying, well, maybe this will kill cable TV, or maybe this is the future of how people experience their content, I think there's certainly room for change in the future. But in the next few years, most people still don't get their TV this way. Most of the content that you want to watch, if you want to watch new stuff, you still need to have a TV package. For HBO, I don't think they're necessarily very afraid of this. Netflix has one good show. If they can launch a series of them and string these together and increase their popularity across different countries, then yes, they start to affect the market. But it's still early days yet.
Unlike a lot of TV shows, Richard, there seems to be a lot more product placement in House of Cards. At least that's what I'm reading. I haven't seen it all yet. But apparently, product placement is everywhere. They're constantly in frame, a deflecting focus for the director's lens, and at times actually hijack portions of the storyline and plot. We're talking, there's Apple products everywhere, BlackBerry, you name it. Do you think this is a winning formula for Netflix to level jump and gain an edge on HBO in terms of product placement, that formula?
Not necessarily. I don't think that what they're doing is very different from what other programs are doing. Also, the thing that that we have to take into account is the difference between product placement and paid product placement, because everyone does paid product placement. There's lots of electronic devices probably popping up in shows that you watch right now. I know a show that I watch on ABC, Suburgatory, they had an episode where the character carried around a Microsoft Surface for basically the entire episode. That, certainly paid product placement. In a situation like this, we actually spoke to some of the people involved with the production. They did obtain, and Apple has done this for a number of shows and movies out there. We usually see a lot of Apple products. They give them products to use in it, but they did not actually pay for the placement. So there's kind of a difference there. I didn't find it distracting. I actually just finished watching it myself this weekend. I waited a little bit to watch through. I didn't find it too distracting, although it was very Apple and BlackBerry heavy.
Do you like the show, Richard?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I think if you've watched the trailer and you think that this kind of political drama, if you like Kevin Spacey as an actor, if you like previous David Fincher productions who's directing the series, if you think that if you like that type of content, you're going to love this.
Now, before Netflix took on the production, Kevin Spacey and company were in talks with other networks like HBO. Do you see Netflix becoming just another choice for production companies, or is it a different animal entirely and they have to look at it like some other beast?
No, I think it's definitely becoming another option, and it's already become an option in the later stage window for studios to license their content. And they've also got a lot of competition there because you've got companies like Amazon has launched their streaming service. Redbox is just getting into the game with a streaming subscription offering. So they've got a lot of competition there now. And one way that they can differentiate themselves and split apart from those other services is to have something exclusive, which means licensing it before it comes out anywhere else. And they're definitely a competitor there. They've got this. They've got several other shows coming out throughout the year. They just signed a deal with Disney where in a couple of years, movies are going to come to Netflix first.
Richard, we appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for doing this.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
There's Richard Lawler, the senior HD editor of Engadget.com. You can follow him on Twitter at RJCC. We appreciate his time. A very interesting conversation, Steve, and I haven't really given my thoughts about it, so let me do that. I like it. I think it's really cool. I like how they're taking this big of a chance. And, you know, it's 2013 or 2013, and I think it's about time television kind of takes that next step. So I'm really excited for it. I haven't seen the show. Something I don't like about it, though, is the fact that they're releasing all 13 episodes, all one season at one time. I don't like that. We've talked about it so much, about how we love Homeland and Breaking Bad, these premium type of shows. And yes, I will watch 3 episodes of Breaking Bad in a row because it's that good. But there is an element of TV that I really like, and that is looking forward to something, the anticipation. I couldn't watch one full season of Breaking Bad because you want it to sink in. You want to talk about it with your friends and family. You want to go online, read articles about the show, what you can look forward to. So, you know, like, for instance, I remember, you know, this past summer when Breaking Bad, the latest season, was on. When a brand new episode comes out on the Sunday night, I'll watch it when it comes out or just after when it's released. And then I'll watch it like 2 or 3 times that week to kind of see the little things you don't realize when you first watch a show. Right? And that's what it's about for me, right? And I think that's what it's about for you too. So what do you think about the fact that they're releasing 13 episodes right away and it's all there for you for whenever you want to watch it? There's no anticipation at all.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely 2 sides to this. One side, from a producer/financial side, is you get a lot of buzz right off the bat when you release it, but then instead of having 13 weeks of new episodes where there's sort of a mini buzz before and after each episode, you don't have any of that, right? But then there's also the sort of fan in me that says, well, it'd be cool to watch 13 episodes in a row. I always thought it was cool to watch, you know, half a season of 24 in a day or something like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, you made the point about you'd watch an episode and you discuss it with a friend. The problem with that is that not everyone watches it at the same time, and right? Not everyone is caught up to the same episode or even the same season.
Very true these days. Yeah.
You know, it's not, you know, in the 90s when Seinfeld was at its height, they would air an episode of Seinfeld and then, you know, the quirks and the phrases from that episode would be huge the next day, right? Yeah. But I don't think you have that so much anymore because everyone watches it at a different time.
True. Yeah.
So I have very mixed feelings about that.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I just think 13 at one time is too much. Like, why not release 5? And
yeah, but then you're in this. To me, it's got to be either one a week or all of them, right? It gets tricky once you get into these weird numbers. Another thing that he brought up that was interesting to me was international distribution.
Yeah,
and it's not something I had thought of before, but you know, when you're airing and deciding on which shows to produce for broadcast networks in the States, you think primarily of your American market, and then if you have international distribution that you want later, then you deal with that. But with Netflix, based on its model, it's international right off the bat.
Yeah.
Right? So whenever it's the day and time when it's released in the States is the day and time it's released in Canada, in Australia, in China, etc., or wherever Netflix is available. So you have you have a global discussion, but B, I wonder if the producers of the show and or the executives at Netflix have to change their thinking in deciding of which shows to pick because they're catering to a more global audience right away.
Personally, I don't have any affiliation with Netflix, obviously. I'm not on their bandwagon or anything. What I am for is just something new, because we've talked about this before, too, about how it's so hard to kind of own a TV show or kind of have access to it. And we talked about like sites like NZB Matrix shutting down, and it's very hard to get these shows. What I want, and I think what many people want, is when they want to watch a show, they want to watch it right away. And if not right away, not to have this long process to get access to it. And I think that's something in 2013 that we shouldn't really be discussing. I think the future is now, and I think something like this Netflix proposal, if you will, I think it's a good thing, and it should be happening in 2013. We need something new.
And just 2 quick points here before we close our discussion on this is, one, are you going to subscribe to Netflix? I'm asking you now because of this show.
I am not subscribing to Netflix because of this show, but when Arrested Development comes out, I think a lot of people would hop on board for that, because that was obviously...
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, that's a very successful show, and I think a lot of people have forgotten then that the deal for that show coming back is that it's strictly on Netflix. So
now, you don't have like when you watch Homeland, you download Homeland through a variety of ways. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Why would you not just download the Arrested Development?
No, but see, that's the question I have
way?
for you, Steve, because earlier you said that you watched the first episode of House of Cards, but not on Netflix. So are you saying that all of these shows are just going to be available on the internet anyway?
Well, yeah. I mean, there are going to be people that are not going to pay for this content regardless of in which way it's being delivered.
Well, I seem like an idiot right now, but my point is, why wouldn't Netflix prohibit that?
They can't.
Why not?
Are you saying why does Netflix let people capture the video? And
For instance... No, I'm not saying prohibit. I'm saying, like, for instance, when a show airs on HBO, it's very hard to find the next day. Is that not correct?
You can get it. There are ways to get it. They're making it very difficult. Trust me, they're making it very difficult, but there are ways to get it.
But are you saying Netflix isn't going to make it very difficult either?
They might, but I'm saying there are going to be people out there that are not going to pay for the content no matter which way it's being delivered. And whether it's on premium cable, on broadcast network, or on Netflix, even $1 is too much for some people.
Yeah, no, it's true.
You know, and the other question I have that was the second point that I was going to bring up is, if they're releasing all 13 episodes at once, what prevents me, and this is a completely, legal solution, but what prevents me from subscribing to Netflix for $7.99 for 1 month, watching all 13 episodes of House of Cards in one day, and then unsubscribing?
Yeah, I know.
Before we brought Richard on, we discussed, well, if you had 2.6 million subscribers subscribed for 2 years, okay, then that works. But if you have 2.6 million people only subscribe for 1 month, that does not work at all.
See, this is what I was trying to say earlier. I think $8 is not a lot of money. You can't get a beer for that much at some places, so it's not a lot of money, and people don't, I think, mind spending it. But I think people need a real big incentive to keep their subscription. And if it's possible to get these shows just on the internet, maybe I've overthink this in the sense that maybe people won't buy into this so much because, yeah, $8 is... People don't like to throw around money if it's not worth it.
Right.
And if it is possible to still get these shows online, as it always will be, I guess, yeah, what is stopping people from watching the shows and then canceling? And then until Arrested Development comes out 8 months later, they'll subscribe again and then cancel it again. Right? So it's like...
That's true. But to your point about the incentive to stay, Netflix did say that they want to produce 5 shows like this. So if you spread it out over the right times of the year, then, like HBO does, they'll have Curb at one time of the season, at one time, and then they have another show, so that at any given time, there's always one show that you want to watch, and that makes you pay your subscription, right? So I guess that's the point, and that until you have 5 or 6 shows of original programming on Netflix, that doesn't work. But, if you're really just a House of Cards fan, there really is nothing stopping you from subscribing to Netflix for a month and then leaving after a month.
Yeah, I think it's going to take some time because they just need a few of these shows that are existing. Because my roommate, Mark, had Netflix for the longest time, and it sat idle. Like, unless you wanted to go on there and watch season 2 of News Radio, I mean, there wasn't much on there. So it's like the incentive is the biggest thing here. So we'll see what happens.